Good evening. It's 6 o'clock. Time to open the October 12th, 2022 session of the Anacortes Planning Commission. Looking around and taking roll, I see Mr. Turetsky and Ms. Ruther are not here. Everyone else is present. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes, draft minutes from September 28th? Any questions or changes? None being heard, we'll approve those minutes. Is there any correspondence, Ms. Grage, other than what's already on the agenda?
There is not. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to item D, new business, the 2023 to 2028 Capital Facilities Plan Update Overview. Take it away.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Steve Hoagland. I'm the city's finance director, and I wanted to just give a quick overview of the capital facilities plan, where we're at in that process, and next steps to come. So I did put a few slides together for background, and I'd be happy to print hard copies if anybody would like a hard copy of this before you go home tonight. But just as way of a little bit of background, the capital facilities plan, it's a 6-year capital plan. Here at the city of Anacortes, we require each of the departments to develop their own capital plan. And then we in finance, in conjunction with the planning department, pull that together in a centralized format. It's required for all cities in Washington state planning under the Growth Management Act. And it's required to be updated at least every 2 years. City of Anacortes, we generally update it every year to match our annual budget process. So for the City of Anacortes, we've set the definitions for a project to be included in the CFP to have an estimated cost of at least $20,000 and at least a 10-year life. So it's, as I said, it's a 6-year planning document, 6-year budget. The one we're looking at now that we'll look at tonight is for the planning period of 2023 through 2028. So that first year of the capital facilities plan will eventually drop into our 2023 operating budget. So later in the year, when council adopts the full operating budget, it will include the projects listed in the 2023 year of the CFP. So both of these documents, essentially the CFP and the budget, we look at them in steps. The CFP is the first phase of the budget process. The operating budget is the second phase, but we do review those in conjunction with each other, kind of in parallel. And at the end of the planning period, at the end of the budget season, if you will, City Council will consider both of those ordinances to adopt the CFP and the budget at the same time. Resources, this is kind of a sticking point. This is one of the issues that causes us to spend a lot of time on trying to level load the CFP. But any project identified in the CFP has to have a clearly identified source of funding. And then if REIT or impact fees are going to be used to fund the project in question, regardless of amount, those need to be included in the CFP. So as I said, the 2023 projects will flow into the 2023 operating budget. Council reviews and adopts the ordinance, or adopts the CFP by ordinance, and the CFP can be amended, but it needs to be done in conjunction with an amendment to the operating budget. This is the schedule for the current CFP. You can see we started this back in June. June 30th was our initial kickoff meeting. We spent the month of July essentially pulling those projects together at the department level, putting revenues together and level loading those projects across the 6-year planning horizon. In August is when the mayor had his meetings with the departments to go through each of these CFP projects at a detailed level. And then we started our review with council on October 3rd, is when council looked at the public works projects. This past Monday, the 10th, they looked at the governmental activities, and then tonight Planning Commission will get a chance to look at the entire budget. And then November 7th is what we have planned right now for the presentation to council. That'll be a public hearing and presentation of ordinance for consideration of adoption. So exciting for this year, the city is implementing OpenGov. OpenGov is a data transparency platform. We've spent about the last year and a half researching options that would best fit the city's needs. We came up with OpenGov. We went through a variety of reviews, presentations, evaluations with different companies that provide this type of transparency tool. We ended up going with OpenGov because it not only provides a transparency portal on the city's website for the public and others to view, but it also provides budget preparation software. And there are other cities using this that we looked at. City of Mount Vernon is actually implementing the same program. We had met with them and talked with them about their process, and that was a big reason for OpenGov, was the positive feedback we got from other users of the software. So it's been exciting for us. There's been a lot of work in this initial year setting OpenGov up, but then subsequently in the following years, it'll be more maintenance. So I'm excited about the future using OpenGov because of the staff savings that I'm thinking it's going to provide us. But what I have here is it's a link. If you click on the link in this electronic format, it would take you to the city website that I have illustrated here. I just took a screenshot of this, and this is on the city finance website. If you navigate to city finance website, and then there's a CFP link, and that'll bring you to this page here. And I can go ahead and do that here. I want you to be able to get a look at how the process works, how easy it is to use this software, and then you can, once you leave here, very easily go in and take a detailed look and as much time as you'd like on any of these projects. So this brings you to, as I said, if you go to the city's website, navigate to the finance site, and then along the left side of the screen here, you can see the capital facilities plan link. We click into this link, this is what comes up. We've got some historical data on here, previous CFPs, but at the top of the page here, there's another link here, this OpenGov Transparency Portal, and then there's another link here called CFP Budget Book. So when you click into the Transparency Portal, this brings you into the view of the CFP that I like. It's my favorite view. It's a really easy way to get a look at the entire CFP at a glance. It's got graphics up here that if you hover over any of these bars, like for example, if you want to see what it is, that blue bar that's driving the 2027 spike, if you hover over that, you can see it's 38.8 million in transportation. So you can, from there, know that if you wanted to get a more detailed look at that, in the data section down below here, the transportation projects, you could easily come across to 2027 and dig into that. There's options. If you want to look at the data in different formats, you could click on pie chart, would bring up different ways to view it, remembering that it's an 8-year program. There's a status bar you could slide to each of the years here if you wanted to look at each of the pie charts individually. I'll jump back to the CFP page quickly. This next link down here, the CFP budget book, if you click on that, it brings up the draft CFP budget. This is in draft form still. There's a number of these elements that still need to be updated. But if you scroll down to the very bottom of this page, there's some summary format, or some summary data here. There's our revenue data by year, by revenue type, and then the expenditures by year, by by category. And then below that, we have links to the individual projects. So if you want to look into a specific project at a detailed level, we have that available. So for example, if you wanted to look at this EDA area of the fiber program, you click on that, and that would bring up that specific project page. Gives a graphic of what area we're talking about, project description, summary. A lot of really good, interesting information here. And you can scroll down to the bottom of that. There's additional information on the cost and this funding source section down here. This is handy because if a project, some of our projects have multiple funding sources, and if you want to see the details of that, you can scroll into this table in this project category, and then view this link here to view report, and that'll bring up a little bit more detailed information. So in this case, for this EDA project, you can see it's made up of $2.2 million in grant funding, an indirect federal grant, and then additionally about $3.1 million in debt that we'll be taking on for that project. So that's the overview of some of the resources available to look at the CFP. So I'd like to jump back to, bear with me, navigate my way back to that category site. So I would like to kind of go through by section, maybe not every project by every year, but I at least wanted you to see the overview of project category by year, and then I wanted you to get a detailed look at each of the projects budgeted for 2023. So if we can take just a few minutes to do that. So transportation projects, this includes the road maintenance program. So new transportation projects, you'll see a couple of roundabout projects that are scheduled in the CFP, but it also includes the overlay program that the city works every year. 8.8 million next year, and you can see it drops to 3 million the year after, and then back up to 25, 23, and 38 million in 25 through 27, back down to 2 million in 28. Sewer project is 23 million next year, down to 11 in 23, and then pretty level the next couple of years, back up to 20 million and 17 million in 27 and 28. Water projects, 19.1 million next year. In general government, we'll look at these again. We don't have a lot of activity in general government, but it does not include the fiber, but kind of anything else you might think of when you think in general government, like in the planning department or projects like that. Fiber, we have 3 years of projects lined up, 7.8 million next year, 3 million the following year, and then the 35,000 the year after that is for just equipment that would go to support developers in the development of the infrastructure that would go into developments as builders were installing infrastructure in their projects. Parks, we have 1.6 next year, pretty level throughout each of the year of the planning horizon. Fire department's 1.7 next year. And in storm, we have about 210,000 next year, and then that is graduated by 10,000 each year after that. Sanitation's 45,000 a year. That's just to replace dumpsters that rust out and wear out that they surplus. So the 45,000 is for replacement dumpsters. We click into transportation at the detailed level. So we lose, when we expand that category, we lose the last several years of the CFP planning horizon. You can't see those columns. So we can see 23, 24, and 25 easily, but I I mainly wanted to touch on these 2023 projects, make sure they were clear and you didn't have any questions about those. So the annual pavement management, you see in the out years, it's 1.8 million generally. We have 2.4 million budgeted next year. That's a carryover. The Public Works Department is not planning on expending the entire 1.8 million this year, so there's going to be an estimated 600,000 left over that will carry over into next year and put that into road overlays as well. R Avenue safety and mobility improvements. This is a roundabout that's scheduled at R Avenue and 30th for 5.4 million. That's primarily grant funded with a match with impact fees. Phase 1 of the South Commercial Avenue corridor plan is scheduled to start next year at 500,000 and continue in 2024 with 1.5 million. Annually, the city puts about 200,000 into sidewalk and trip hazard repairs. Additionally, we have 105,000 scheduled for ADA ramps next year, and that graduates by 5,000 a year through the planning horizon. This H Avenue ACFL connector, this is grant funded at 200,000. It's a stretch of sidewalk from 41st Street along H up towards Heart Lake up to where it joins Trailhead. Non-motorized improvements of 10,500. It's a small amount, but this is REIT funded. Again, if it uses REIT, it's required to be included in the CFP regardless of amount, so that's why we have it illustrated here. It's a quick look at our transportation projects. I'd be happy to dig into any of those at a more detailed level if there's
Mr. Chair.
questions.
I'm not sure I can let him go without asking about the 25, 26, and 27, the ramp up there. It looks like that's associated with the South Commercial Avenue corridor plan.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'm trying to,
I think it's the top line there. And
Oh.
there was a
yeah,
if
yeah,
you scrolled over a little bit,
yeah. Right, yeah, it makes it a little bit awkward. I wish I could adjust these columns. But yeah, so I mentioned earlier we're starting phase 1 of South Commercial next year at 500,000. You're exactly right, phase 2, and that's estimated at 20 million per year now. Fiscal year 27, 26, and 25, that phase 2 South Commercial Avenue corridor from 13th to 34th,
so the expenditure side of this is just one side of the story, right? There's a revenue section that I'm hopeful is going to be how we're going to pay for all of that. And
yeah.
commercial being State Route 20, I have to assume the state is going to be responsible for the majority of that.
Yeah, it's an excellent assumption. So in this, see on the left side here, the CFP totals by category that's highlighted. These are the different reports that are available. If you click in here by bars, we should be able to navigate to that. So you can see in this 25, 26, 27, these big blocks of money here, and this is exactly what we're talking about. So we've got 20 million per year budgeted right now. That's federal grant funding. So a total of 60 million across those 3 years, 20 million a year grant funded. Yeah. Yeah, right here. Yes, excellent question. Sewer projects, if there are no other transportation, please
Mr.
holler
Chair,
if you want to.
Mr.
Oh.
Milano.
one question on Kansas Avenue under projects.
Yes.
I see nothing in the first 3 years. Can you scroll over and show
Yes,
me what's
absolutely.
happening in the other?
Yeah, I believe Kansas is scheduled for 2027, so there's 1.2 million
Okay.
identified in 2027 for Kansas.
For some unknown reason, I get 12 questions a
Yeah,
month about that road. Thank you very much.
yeah, and I can say that So this has hit the radar of our new Public Works Director. He's been talking to me about that, and I know that he has shown interest in doing something in an accelerated fashion on Kansas. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that come up again in the more near future than 2027.
I have just a question about the depths of this software, and I did not get that deep into looking at the plan. But it looks like the level that you showed us has project descriptions, outcomes, timelines. Presumably, there's some justification for each project cooked in. How granular or how detailed can you dive into this? For example, if somebody wanted to look at a particular project and find out what was the overhead, who are the contractors, what are we spending on vendors or consultants, how much is our internal laborers being expended?
Yeah.
Would they be able to find that in there?
So yeah, it's a good question. So the quick answer is not yet, but it's coming. So we're starting with the capital facilities plan, and the amount of detail we have at this point is just at that project level that I showed, where you can see a lot of verbiage and then a little bit more in the expenditure and the revenue. Where the additional detail will come in is when we get the operating budget loaded into the operating portal, and then what we don't have yet is the actual data. So that's still a link that hasn't been connected to our website yet. So once OpenGov is connected with our accounting system, and then that data can freely flow into OpenGov, much of that information you're requesting will be available. Some of the things like the overhead, things
That's a
of that nature would be, you would probably need to, ask me for that. I'd be happy to provide that, but that type of information is, it isn't as direct, so it's harder to include. But as far as like contracts and, if you wanted to look at the amount spent on a particular project, once they get going on our avenue, for example, next year, it would be within that operating budget section where you'd be able to get that information.
So I'm hoping this assumption is correct. Does this system also allow for project managers to input desired projects so that they can be prioritized amongst the budget and all the other projects that are on the list? And what happens if there's a change in a project or a project budget, and how does that affect the overall capital budget?
Yeah, so I think both of those items would require a budget amendment. So if a project were to come up during the year when we weren't actively planning the CFP, we always have the option to do a budget amendment or a CFP amendment along with a budget amendment. So if a new project were to come up that they needed to get included, we've done that from time to time because a grant opportunity comes up, and we need to have it included in our capital plan in order to apply for the grant. So we can do an amendment, add it. If the scope of a project changes and the budget needs to change, we would do an amendment to change that as well.
And this will all be informed by the data that's in the system? The budget change is informed by what you're tracking in the system then?
So
if somebody changes their project budget, how does that show up in the in the ordinance?
Yeah, so before the project budget can change, the budget would have to change. So it's kind of a tandem process, I guess. But if a project scope changes and the engineer, the project manager needs to change that budget, then the capital plan would need to change to reflect that. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Curtis.
your answer may have just applied to this question as well, but is there a function in this software where if I came down and clicked on 17th Street Q or R Avenue Safety Mobility, if I'm a member of the public and I don't know what that project is, is there a place for a brief narrative or an explanation of what that project entails?
Yeah, so, boy, I really wish we could link these, pardon me.
I mean, some of them are pretty self-explanatory, but many aren't.
Yeah, no, exactly. I wish we could link these to the project stories that we established. So this link here that I was showing at the bottom of the CFP draft project, we have these links to the individual projects themselves. So, and you can see we don't have our public works projects in here yet. So this is still in work. But if somebody was looking at, you're looking at a parks project, and you wanted more information on the skate park, it doesn't drill down any further from this section, but you can jump into the stories section of the document itself, of what will be the final CFP document, and then scroll down through parks until, I'm sorry, was it the skate park? Until you find the skate park, click into that, and then some additional detail is here. We'll provide, generally we like to provide a graphic to give an idea of what the concept of the project looks like, and then more detailed verbiage of the project itself, and if it's tied with any objectives, and then more information, if there is more information on either the expenditure or revenue side, it would be provided here. So in this case, you could drill into the resources and see that it's an estimated cost of $900,000, $800,000 of that is coming from this code 360, interest and other earnings, which sounds really strange. So click into this report. Let's see if there's additional information on that revenue source. So we click into 360, we can see it's 800,000 contributions. The 100,000 is real estate excise tax, REIT 1, to provide the city match for that project. So it's not as clean and tight as I wish it would be, but it's certainly better than what we have. And I'm hopeful that there will be edits to the OpenGov program at some point where we can link those directly to that overview page.
And this is a question, not a criticism, so let me make sure I phrase that correctly. For the things that are on the 23 budget, do you anticipate having, whether it's hyperlinked through here or on a separate page, do you anticipate having a descriptive narrative for all the things that are on the 23 proposal while public comment is still open?
Yes, absolutely. So the only ones we don't have right now linked in here are the public works projects. Those are in work. By the time we have the public hearing on November 7th, my hope, my dire hope, is that we can have those done by before the end of the week next week. I think we're hours away from that, but certainly by the time the advertisement for the public hearing hits the papers, that should all be available on the public portal. Yeah, it's good. It's a good point.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from commissioners? And do you have any more to add, Mr. Hoagland?
If you like, I guess if you'd indulge me for just a few more minutes, there's a couple projects I think are worth pointing out in the 2023 timeframe, if that's okay. The sewer projects, you can see the biggest project we have in 2023, it's $19.5 million for the new sewer plant outfall, $19.5 million next year and $4 million the year after. So a very significant project that's been started, it's in work. It can't be completed at this time because of fish windows that are identified by, I believe, Department of Ecology and Fisheries at the state level at any rate. So that's going to have to wait until next year for completion. Also wanted to point out in the water CFP, the old water treatment plant is identified for decommissioning next year. commissioners may remember that when they started doing some preliminary testing a few years ago, we first started that work of decommissioning the plant, there were low levels of PCBs that were identified. So we've been working with the state and federal governments and getting that squared away. So we're finally at the point we can start that project next year.
Mr. Chair.
Mr.
So
Graff.
just for accountability's sake, I know that there's a $20 million hit on that water treatment the water treatment decommissioning project, right? And that's something that wouldn't necessarily show up in this budget because it doesn't meet the criteria of having a 10-year cycle or life cycle, or?
Yeah, no, so, it's a good question. So we did include this in the CFP, even though it's a good point because it's not a capital project, but because of the nature of the program, the visibility, the size of it, we felt it entirely appropriate to include. So that's what that project is. It's actually $12 million. Our latest estimate puts it at $12 million for the decommissioning and cleanup of that old water treatment plant.
So that is that number that, okay.
That's right. Yeah, that estimate has kind of changed as we've been moving along. So that's
Okay.
the current estimate. Yep.
Yep, thank you.
So technically, it's not capital funding, it's more operations funding, but it's put here because it's a big ticket item.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those, it's kind of like a road maintenance program. We put a couple $1 million into the asphalt every year. It's not capital, but it's appropriate to treat it as such because of the nature and the size of the program. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Our fiber project, we have two main phases left of build out for the Anacortes fiber program. Both of those are scheduled for next year. The EDA area is, that's kind of the main downtown corridor, and it flows west up onto the hill there. 5.4 million. Guaymas View is that area that's just up off of Oaks Avenue. That project has already been bid, and I think estimated start is in November for that. The Parks project, we already talked about the skate park. That was the main project I wanted to point out for next year. The fire projects, $1.6 million is budgeted for a new ladder truck. I wanted to make sure Commission was aware of that. Storm is just its routine pond cleaning, and then sanitation we talked about earlier for dumpster replacement. So yeah, so that's kind of the main thing I wanted to show the Planning Commission, and be happy to answer any questions or any other comments.
I guess the thing I like the best is that it doesn't combine operating and capital dollars, so it's a lot easier to know which is which when we're looking at budget items.
Yeah, and that, again, I love that about this OpenGov program, is we do have, it is easy to see those. So looking at these reports that you have here, CFP by category, and then down at the bottom of these three options, the 2023 annual budget, capital and operating combined. So you can get a look at the operating budget at this point. We don't have the detail that we will eventually, but at the high level of operations is in there. So, yeah.
Looks like you've done a lot of work for
It's been a
for
tremendous
new
amount of
project
work.
like this.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Just one more comment on this. So benefit to the public, I get that, but also a benefit to department staff as well, right? I mean, this is a tool that is meant to find efficiencies in processes, rack and stack priorities, right? Understand finite budgets, and so all of that, and that goes into play with this. I mean, will they'll eventually, as this becomes more populated with information, show that kind of information where the city has rack and stacked priorities?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's again one of the key components of this that I was interested in is some of that budget work that we haven't been doing, that type of priority. We have the 6-year planning budget for capital. We don't have that same thing in the operating budget. This OpenGov tool will allow us to easily generate that. And as far as the staff savings goes, you're right on. All of the feedback from staff at this point has been positive in putting data in using this format.
Great. Anything else?
Not for me. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we're moving along to item E, old business, and I'm going to propose a piece of old business before we close the meeting. Can we, Libby, I'd hate to put you on the spot, but can Don, at a previous meeting, said he would be working on a schedule of events for us to be looking ahead for review and so on. What I'm interested in at this point is what's the status and the schedule of events for the R4 zoning issue? Because I understand that's been discussed at the city council, and we're expecting to see some time spent on that. I think I'd like to know a little bit more about what to expect and when to expect it.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you for that question. I do believe that just for your scheduling purposes and knowing what's coming up for the next meeting on the 24th, I guess it would be, we at this point tentatively have scheduled a look at the draft housing action plan for the Planning Commission. So that'll include a presentation by the consultant that's been working on that, Makers Architecture. So that'll be an exciting thing to take a look at. And I am not sure on the R4 bonus height. That could happen at the next meeting or the one after that. I know it is coming up very soon. I'll be happy to confirm that and send out a schedule to the commission once Mr. Musimer returns.
So we'll see some working opportunities to look at options, I assume.
Correct.
And are we also going to look at public hearings, or is that reserved for the city council level?
For the R4 bonus height,
Yes.
that would include public hearings at the Planning Commission level.
Okay. All right. Any more comments or questions from commissioners? With that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you much, everybody.
Thank you.